All right, let's bring on Steve Balderson. He is the director of Alchemy of the Spirit. It is out now. I think it's out now on video on demand. He is joined. I love when we get to talk to directors and bring them on the show. Let's welcome Steve Balderson to the show. Steve, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Doing good, doing well. All right, good to have you on the show here. We've got almost 700 people watching us live on YouTube. Tell us about your movie, Alchemy of the Spirit. It's out today on video on demand. Am I right?
Correct. Prime Video as of now. I think I don't remember which order the other platforms are going to be, like one after the other, but I know you can get it on Prime Video today.
Awesome. Tell us about the film.
Well, it begins with a character played by Xander Berkeley who wakes up and finds that his wife has died overnight in the bed next to him. And as he's coming to realize whether or not he's so out of his mind when this happens at the beginning that it takes a minute for him to realize that she may or may not be dead. And he tries to preserve her. And then as he's creating a death mask of her face, we get an insight into the fact that he's an artist when his art dealer, played by Mink Stoll, calls and says, "Hey, you got this commission. Do you have any ideas on what you could make?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm working on it right now," essentially. And then as he's creating this death mask of his wife, she may or may not come back to him in spirit form, or he's hallucinating or otherwise. But it's sort of a poem or an exposition of grief and what all that means. I mean, grief is a heavy thing, and it was kind of hard to make a movie about just grief in that way.
Well, we've been talking about grief. We've been talking about Henry Cavill not playing Superman anymore. That's a different kind of grief. But yes. First of all, a huge fan of Xander Berkeley. I've interviewed him before. I think he is an underappreciated actor. Most of you might know him. He's briefly featured in Terminator 2, but also Mink Stoll. I love Mink Stoll. Mink Stoll from John Waters films. Mink Stoll is awesome. She's so cool. So big fan of hers. We have some questions. So the movie is out on, it is weird with the video on demand platforms when it comes to indie stuff. It kind of not right away, but it's like mostly on video on demand. I always just go to an app called Just Watch. I'll just put the name of a movie in Just Watch to check it out. But we've got some comments and questions here from our chat. Pit Boy Gamer says, "Hail Steve." Jamie G says, "Hey Steve." And Elliot Cecil has a question here that he asked earlier, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Greasy Guidos asks, "Should we watch it with tissues on standby? Sounds heavy."
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's, even though, I mean, I want to tell you the story that Karen Black told me on her deathbed, which we can get to.
Oh, wow. The Karen Black.
Yeah, which is sort of part of the inspiration for this film.
Oh, my God.
I think while it starts a little creepy, it actually is very, very beautiful. And it's almost like it's a supernatural love story. So I don't think it produced tears. I think it's a little bit more introspective. If anybody's ever listened to an Alan Watts talk, or gone like super, into the universe in your mind, I think it's a little bit more like that, as opposed to something that you might cry about. I think, I don't know. If you do cry, tell me, because I'm curious about that.
Well, Karen Black, by the way, another underappreciated actress, was in probably a thing that I still to this day can't stop thinking about, Trilogy of Terror. When I was a kid, it was a TV produced horror, anthology horror story. She starred in the last segment from it, which was a little, voodoo doll that comes to life and attacks her, and it scared the hell out of me.
And I think that was like the first time they did something like that on, regular TV, cable TV. And I think it did scar everybody who saw it.
I mean, you can get the creature from Trilogy of Terror from that segment. You can get it as an action figure. You can actually sell it. It's crazy. But she was in that. Tell me the story about Karen Black.
Okay, so she was in my film Firecracker, and I'd known her for a number of years, and she knew she was dying, and she said to me, "Do you want to know what it's really like to know you're alive?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "It's in the unknown, because if you've gone down this road 1,000 times, you know there's a tree coming up in a village and some cars and some people, you kind of go out of your mind and you're not really present." And she said, if you've never been down this road before, you have no idea what's around the corner. So you have to be very, very present and alert. And it's in that moment of not knowing that you're most truthfully alive. And she said, there's no greater place to be. So when I heard that and I took it in, I simultaneously was putting this movie together, and Xander had given me this book called Unobstructed Universe about about a man who was communicating with his dead wife via a psychic. And so as I'm exploring that and I'm thinking about this thing Karen told me, I thought, well, let's have this movie be a constant state of being in the unknown. You know, it's like when someone dies or is about to die or has a grave illness or has lost something or someone, you have no idea what the next 10 minutes are going to feel like for your life. So I said, let's start this movie at this tone. And then just when you think you know where you're going, as a viewer, it shifts. And then just when you think you know where you're going again, it shifts again. And so I invited people, like when it was on film festival circuit and I was presenting it at film festivals, I said, and I'll tell everybody here who hasn't seen it yet, go in with the idea of just remaining really present and soak up what's happening at that moment, because in a minute it's going to be different and you're going to have no idea what's going to happen next. And thank God for Karen. It's like, what a great inspiration to have heard that, because it's kind of changed my life in a way.
Wow. We're getting a lot of great comments and questions. If you don't mind sticking around, Stunt Brat 777 Smith says, Steve B, wow, I got to be a stunt double for Karen Black in the 80s.
Amazing.
And Solomon Thornton asks, what makes a great director, Steve?
Someone who's organized and has decided what they want before they try to go do it.
And Elliot Cecil asked earlier, says, for $4.99, says, I am a film student and I'm wanting to dip my toes into directing, screenwriting. Where do I start? And how do I eventually get my name out? Thanks. Coming from a director who has done it.
And I did it from Kansas without knowing that I probably shouldn't have at the time. so I think I think it's, go inward and tell what matters to you, and if that appeals to someone, great. And if it doesn't, great. But, you'll still get that sort of energy going and those wheels. I learned more, on the very first day of directing my first film than I ever had in film school. Wow. And, you can learn what you can out of books and going to workshops, but until you're actually doing it and you're learning the lessons of life as you're going through it, I think it's pretty impossible to try to figure it out. So I say just go for it.
I would add one more thing to that. A friend of mine once said, here's what I would say to Elliot. I hope you're still watching and listening. Elliot, make a really good short film. A really good short film. Do not put the short film on YouTube, no matter how tempted you are. Make a good short film. Make it under 10 minutes. Tell a story. Leave them wanting more. And take it on the film festival circuit. A friend of mine said he learned more taking his movie on the festival circuit than he did in grad school. So forget grad school, make a really good short film, get it in a lot of film festivals, and then physically go to those festivals where you'll meet and be around other filmmakers, you'll be around actors, you'll be around producers and people in the industry. Make a great short film, easier said than done, and then you travel the festival circuit for a year going to festivals and meeting people. You'll have everything you need to be able to go move ahead in your career. Thank you, Elliot, for your support for the channel. Elk3 says, when is it too late to become a director?
Never. I mean, there are people who do it in their 90s. Why I go for it.
Cool. And then Let's see. Pip Boy Gamer says, can I make a profitable movie on a Samsung Galaxy?
Sure. My recipe is ask yourself first what you think you're going to get out of it. You know, it's like, what is your market? Who's the market for? Who is this for? Who are the buyers, the people at home who are going to pay for this? And how much money do you think that's going to add up to? And then my advice would be to make whatever that is for half that.
Other questions. Boy, we're getting a lot here. Best way to improve your writing skills?
Remain curious and go out and explore something you've never done before in the world.
Was that kind of your approach with Alchemy of the Spirit? I mean, it sounds very deep, and you know, I'm kind of wondering what the jumping off point was for you with this story.
Well, it was a combination of a lot of stuff. It was like Karen giving me that, my mentor dying. He was my mentor at CalArts, Eric Sherman, who'd written a bunch of film books, and when he died, I felt like it was like Yoda, you know, in a sense of like I could see him across the room. Oh my God. And in fact, this day, so the craziest day ever, I wake up to learn that Eric Sherman has died, my mentor. I feel this great inspiration to start painting again for no reason. And I get in an Uber and go to Blick Art Studio to buy some random canvases. And I walk in and there's this guy staring at me. And he's got these ice blue eyes and he's just following me, this old man. I'm like, who the fuck is this old man? And finally it figures out, it dawns on me, it's David Lynch. And Eric Sherman, my mentor, had introduced me to David in like 99, 2000, 2001 or so. And he and I had never met in person. We'd only faxed each other because David didn't have a phone at the time. And Eric had gotten David's Eraserhead shown at the AFM back in the day when no one else would show it. And I thought, oh my God, this is crazy. And as David's coming towards me, I just reach out my hand and shake his hand and tell him who I am. And he said, it's so good to see you again. And I'm like, you too. And I'm like, we've never seen each other before in our lives. And I told him about Eric having died, and it was kind of intense. And then we just each went around the corner to pick up whatever art supplies we were getting. It was the weirdest thing. And on the way home, I called Sarah Clark and said, Sarah, we need to make a movie about death and all this stuff. And she's like, Xander just landed at LAX, 20 minutes ago. And I call Xander and I'm like, hey, let's do this movie. He's like, meet me at this coffee shop in 20 minutes. And so I'm back across town. And by that point, most of the stories, falling together for me. And then that's where it sort of started. Like that was all those things together are what began it. And I've always been interested in, the universe and what makes us tick and where do we go and what do we do and where does it come from and all this bullshit, which is great.
Xander's great. I've interviewed him at South by. I've interviewed him when we had a different office that we did a podcast before we did video. He is just awesome. He goes for it.
Yeah.
More questions. Megiddo Eubanks says, why did you cast Mink and how did you get to meet her? Because Mink Stoll, not a lot of people know who Mink Stoll is. If you're a John Waters fan, you know exactly who she is. But,
oh, shit. The first time I saw her, I mean, I was always a John Waters fan, but when I was really aware of her was when she played Dottie Henkel in Serial Mom.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that poor woman. I love her. And I somehow was introduced to her around 2008 or 9. I think Pleasant Gaiman introduced us. And we were talking about doing a completely different movie. And then we eventually did work together one other time before this. But when I was thinking about, she's a total pro. I mean, like Xander, it's like on set, the most easygoing, no diva, even though you'd think of those types of people as diva behavior, whatever, but nicest people, the coolest people. And that was one of the reasons why I was like, Mink would be really just fun to work with again.
Another question here. Defeater Eater says, for Steve, is a bigger budget generally better than a lower budget? Do you feel capable of doing better work with more funds, or are you more creative with less money?
Well, I love being creative. So, give yourself a box of whatever amount that is, and you figure out how to do bigger, better with that. I mean, I've been on projects that are, $1 million or more, and also projects that are like $50,000. And I guarantee you that the creativity that goes into both is the same, and you spend every cent in both places, you know. And in some cases, you know, you still, even if you've got $1 million, you still have to get sponsors, or you trade, or you have, you know, you still have to, because you can't, you know, go up against the $100 million movies and think that you're gonna, you know, it's tricky. But I'd say the value of the dollar doesn't make or break the project being bigger, better, or worse.
Yeah. A comment here from Stuntbrat777, who was Karen Black's stunt double, says, Steve B, agreed. Success is about drive and tenacity. You gotta want it. And we'll wrap it up with this final question here from Sean Z, Construct, who's a member, says, hey, Steve, congrats, man. What camera did your team use, and how important of a decision is that for you, especially since you're a writer as well?
My cinematographer, Hanuman Brown Eagle, owns a few different kinds of cameras, and he and I have had this lengthy discussion. It's not the camera, it's about who's operating them. So, you know, just because you've got a Red Dragon, which is what we shot this Alchemy of the Spirit on in particular, the camera's not going to make it look great if you don't know how to operate it. So regardless of what it is, make sure that you've got a DP who knows what they're doing. But in this case, we used the Red Dragon, which was great.
Cool. And the movie Alchemy of the Spirit is available. It's on Amazon. It's on, you can buy, rent the film. The trailer is on YouTube as well. Check that out. Steve, thank you for coming by the Film Threat livecast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This is so much fun. It's so good to see you guys.
Great.
Thanks.
All right. Take care. Congrats again on the movie.
Thank you. See ya.
All right. Later.